There is a man at the center of this story. He was 31 years old on the morning this happened. He had a good job, a good life, and a woman he loved. He also had a best friend he had trusted for 9 years. On the morning he was supposed to get married, 2 hours before the ceremony, he found out that those two people, the woman he loved and the friend he trusted most, had been together behind his back. Not once, not by mistake. For a long time. Before we start, if you love powerful African stories, filled with emotion, mystery, and real-life lessons, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's coming next. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Are you watching from the United States, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, South Africa, or somewhere else entirely? I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Now, let's begin. This is the story of what he did next. Not what he said, not how loud he shouted, not the scene he caused. What he did, how he chose to carry it, and what that morning cost him, and what in the end it gave him. This is not a revenge story, it is a betrayal story. A real one. And real betrayal stories do not end with screaming. They end with silence, and with a man deciding, in the middle of the quietest moment of his life, who he is going to be. Low and steady. Settle in. Let us go back to that morning. To the hotel room, the pressed suit, the phone on the table, and the first small thing that told him the day was not going to go the way he had planned. He had been awake since 5:15. Not from nerves, at least not the kind that anyone would recognize. There was no dry mouth, no restless leg, no racing heart. Those are the nerves of a man who is afraid of what is coming. What he had was different. It was the particular wakefulness that arrives when something inside a person already knows that the day requires full attention, before the mind has agreed to grant it. He lay on his back in the hotel room and looked at the ceiling, listened to the building, the low hum of the air conditioning. The city starting its Saturday morning outside the window. It was his wedding day. He had been planning this day for 8 months, the venue, the suit, the rings, the vows he had written and rewritten 7 times because every version felt either too much or not enough. And lying there in that room at 5:15 in the morning, he felt none of the things a man is supposed to feel on the morning of the most important day of his life. No excitement. No electricity, no sense of a future arriving. Just quiet, the particular kind of quiet that is not peace, the kind that is waiting. He got up around 6, showered slowly, the way a man showers when he has nowhere to rush to, yet something in him wants to stay in the last normal moment before the day begins. He dressed carefully, white shirt first, pressed, simple, then the trousers, then the jacket, which he hung back on its stand because something in him was not ready to be fully dressed yet. He stood in front of the full-length mirror, not adjusting anything, not checking the fit. Just looking at himself the way a man looks when he is trying to figure out if the face in the mirror matches what he feels inside. It did not. The man in the mirror looked entirely ready, composed, put together, certain. But the man behind the eyes was standing at the edge of a sentence that had not yet been finished. His phone was on the bedside table, screen down. He had placed it that way deliberately the night before. Not because he was avoiding anyone, but because there is a specific kind of pressure that gathers around a phone on the night before a wedding. Everyone wanting to reach you. Everyone wanting to be part of the moment, and he had wanted to keep the morning his for a little while. He picked it up, turned it over. 18 messages, 4 missed calls, 3 voicemails. Friends from school. Relatives he had not seen since Christmas. His mother, who had sent 3 separate messages in the space of 40 minutes, each one slightly more emotional than the last. He scrolled through them all, smiling at the right ones, feeling the warmth of people who loved him. And then he reached the bottom of the list and he noticed something, a name that was not there. Josh. He went back to the top and scrolled again. Checked his notifications. Checked the group chat. Checked his email. Nothing from Josh. Now, to understand why that mattered, you have to understand who Josh was. Josh had been his best friend for 9 years, since the second year of university. Since a Tuesday in October, when they had both stood in the wrong administrative queue for 20 minutes, and neither had realized until they reached the front. They had both laughed. The real kind. The kind that makes two strangers immediately feel like they have known each other longer than they have. That was the beginning. In 9 years, Josh had been present for every significant moment of his life. The job offer he almost did not accept. The relationship before Juliana that ended badly. The year his father was ill. The year he considered leaving the city entirely. Through all of it, he was always the first to reach out. Before anyone else. He noticed things before they were announced. He arrived before he was expected. He had never once missed an important morning. Not once. In 9 years. And, on the morning of his wedding, to a woman Josh himself had introduced him to. His silence was the loudest thing in the room. One low, sustained note. He told himself the explanations. He was busy, getting ready, helping Juliana prepare. His phone had died, the message had not come through. Every explanation reasonable, every explanation possible, every explanation exactly the kind of thing a man tells himself when the real explanation is already sitting quietly at the back of his mind, waiting for him to stop explaining. He went to the window. Stood there. Watched the street below carry on with its ordinary Saturday morning indifference. A man walking a dog. A woman in a yellow coat, reading something on her phone. A taxi moving slowly through the junction. All of it continuing. All of it unaware. The world entirely indifferent to the fact that something had shifted in the room above it. He picked up his phone, opened Josh's conversation. The last message he had sent was from the previous evening. 8:47. 5 words. Tomorrow's going to be perfect. He read those 5 words 3 times. The first time, warm. Exactly like her. The second time, neutral, just words. The third time, something else. Something he could not name yet, but something that felt slightly wrong, the way a note played slightly flat feels wrong before you have the word for it. He typed back, 3 words. Where are you? He set the phone down, made tea. Drank it slowly. Came back to the phone. Nothing. And in the nothing, something shifted inside him. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just 1 degree. The way the temperature of a room changes before anyone can identify the source. He opened Juliana's conversation. The last message she had sent him was from the night before. 11:17. 4 words. See you at the aisle. He stared at those 4 words for a long time. Because this was Juliana, a woman who wrote in paragraphs, a woman who ended messages with 3 questions because she always wanted to know more. A woman who had never once sent him a message this short on a day this significant. 4 words. Like a confirmation of a dental appointment. Not, I cannot wait to see you tomorrow. Not, I love you and I will see you at the aisle. Just, see you at the aisle, closed, final, like a door shut quietly from the inside. He sat on the edge of the bed. And for the first time that morning he stopped trying to explain the feeling away. He sat with it. Let it be what it was. Felt its shape without immediately trying to change it. And what it felt like, he would later understand, was the specific, unmistakable sensation of information that has been gathering quietly for weeks, finally making itself impossible to ignore. He did not know what made him do it. There was no plan behind it, no strategy, no conscious decision. He simply picked up his phone and instead of reading the messages, he looked at the timestamps. Josh's first, then Juliana's, then Josh's again, then Juliana's again. Back and forth. Not looking at words, looking at numbers, looking at the gaps, looking at the rhythm of 2 separate conversations laid side by side. And what he found, he would describe it later as the moment when the floor of a room gives way, not by collapsing but by simply no longer being there. What he found was this. When Josh went quiet, Juliana went quiet. When Juliana replied quickly, Josh replied within minutes. When there was a 40-minute silence in Josh's messages, there was a 40-minute silence in Juliana's messages. Exactly 40 minutes, not approximately. He scrolled back further. 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The pattern was the same, unbroken, consistent, as regular as breathing. Two people's availability with him, their silences and their responses, following the exact same rhythm, the same peaks, the same valleys, like one tide, not two. He's one low note, hold for 4 seconds. He put the phone down, picked it back up, went through it again, more slowly this time. Still the same. He sat very still on the edge of that bed and understood what he was looking at. Not the words, not the content of any single message, the pattern. Two people in the same physical space sharing the same hours, taking turns managing their separate communications with him. 3 weeks of synchronized silence. 3 weeks of synchronized responses. The unmistakable shape of a hidden double life, revealed not through a single dramatic discovery but through the cold, quiet mathematics of time. He knew the mind would try to find alternatives. He had already been through them. Coincidence. Overlapping schedules, both of them busy with wedding preparations at the same times. One day possible, 1 week, unlikely. 3 unbroken weeks, not coincidence, not even close. The information in front of him was not accusation, it was not assumption, it was not fear making shapes in the dark. It was data. Clean, cold, irrefutable. The kind that does not need emotion to be understood, it just needs someone willing to look. He put his phone in his jacket pocket, picked up his keys. Did not call ahead, did not text, did not announce himself in any way. Because he understood something clearly. When you announce yourself before you arrive, you give people the chance to become the version of themselves they want you to see. He was done seeing prepared versions. He needed the real one. He walked out of that hotel room in his wedding suit, 2 hours before his own ceremony, and drove to a building across the city he had visited many times before, as a welcome guest. He was not a welcome guest this time. He was a man arriving at the truth. The drive took 12 minutes. He knew this because he checked the time when he left and checked it again when he arrived. The mind grasps for numbers when everything else is shifting. Numbers stay still. He parked the car, sat for a moment with the engine off. The building in front of him was ordinary. 4 floors of pale brick, a neat entrance with a row of buzzers beside the door. Saturday morning quiet outside, nothing announcing itself. Nothing marking itself as a place where something significant was about to be confirmed. That was the part that would stay with him longest, not what was inside, but how ordinary the outside looked. Because betrayal does not live in dramatic places. It does not announce itself. It exists inside ordinary buildings, plain walls, normal doors, non-remarkable hallways that hold extraordinary damage. He stepped out of the car, closed the door quietly, walked to the entrance. He had been to this building before, several times. He had stood at this same entrance and pressed the buzzer without a second thought. He had been let in without hesitation, because he was trusted here. Because he was welcome. The memory of that ease sat heavily in him as he walked through the door. Not the building, not what might be happening inside it. The fact that he had been here, as a friend, and had never once questioned what he was stepping into. He took the stairs, 2nd floor, 3rd door on the left. He stopped at the door, and the 30 seconds he stood there before opening it, those 30 seconds were not hesitation, they were not fear. They were preparation, the act of gathering oneself before stepping into something that will require everything you have. He went inward, found the stillest part of himself, and led with that. He opened the door. It has 8 full seconds. Absolute silence, no music, nothing at all. Juliana. Josh. Together. The narrator will not linger on this, not because it was not devastating, but because some things do not need to be described to be understood. What needs to be understood is what it looked like. It did not look like surprise. It did not look like an accident discovered mid-act. It did not look like something that had just begun. It looked comfortable, settled, familiar in the way that only time can make things familiar. This had been happening for a long time. That was what the room said to him, without a single word from either of them. Neither of them spoke immediately. And the way Josh looked at him in that moment told him something more devastating than anything he could have said. He was not shocked. He was calculating. His eyes moved across his face the way eyes move when they are measuring the distance between what someone knows and what they think they know. When someone looks at you in the moment of their greatest exposure and their first instinct is calculation, that tells you everything about how long the management of the secret has been practiced. How practiced it has become, how easily it is carried. He stood in that doorway. He looked at them both. And then he did something that neither of them expected. He nodded once. Not in forgiveness, not in agreement, not in goodbye. In acknowledgement. The nod of a man who has seen what he came to see, who no longer needs anything from that room, who has already, somewhere deeper than thought, begun to move on. He turned around, walked back down the corridor, through the entrance, back to the car. Sat down, closed the door, hands on the wheel, eyes forward. And the feeling that had woken him at 5:15, the quiet, persistent, unnamed feeling that had been with him all morning, replaced by something else entirely. Clarity. Slow, mournful reappearance, very low. And with clarity, a decision. Not one he deliberated over, not one he weighed against the alternatives. A decision that had already been made somewhere deeper than thought, somewhere in the 12 minutes of that drive. He was going to the ceremony. Not to get married. To see this all the way through. The room did not erupt. It rippled, slowly, like a stone dropped in still water. People began to understand that something had changed before they understood what it was. The officiant stepped back. The musician sat still. And Juliana's face showed something he had not expected. Not confusion, comprehension. The expression of someone who has always known this moment was possible, who has been waiting to see whether it would arrive, and has now received her answer. "What do you mean?" she said. And he said, "I mean, I saw something today, and I think we both know what I saw, and I think we both know what that means for this ceremony." She did not deny it. That was the final piece. Not the glance, not the door, not the timestamps. The absence of denial. Given every reason in the world to produce denial. A room full of witnesses. A suspended ceremony, the full public weight of the moment, she paused. And looked toward Josh for the second time. And that was that. "I don't think we should continue," he said. And he stepped back. One deliberate step, out of the arrangement. Out of the ceremony, out of the version of the future that had been built on something hollow. And into himself. The room did not collapse. What happened instead was a wave. Slow, moving outward from the center of the room, like a room taking a breath and not yet deciding whether to exhale or hold it. The officiant stepped back from the podium. The musician sat very still. The guests looked at each other the way people look when they are not sure whether what they are witnessing is meant to happen. Juliana looked at him. And this look was different from all the others. Not managed, not composed, not calculated. Just real, the real face, the one underneath everything. And she said quietly in a voice meant only for him, "I didn't think you'd find out like this." 10 full seconds, absolute silence, let it sit completely. 7 words. Not. "It is not what you think." Not, "Let me explain." Not, "You have this all wrong." 7 words that closed every remaining door. Because those 7 words were not a denial. They were an admission dressed in the language of regret, not for what happened but for how it was discovered. The regret was about the timing, not the act. And in a strange way, those 7 words were almost a gift. Because they removed the last thing he was still carrying, the last small, stubborn possibility that he had misread something. That the timestamps were coincidence. That the door had been misread. That the glance was innocent. Those 7 words removed it. All of it. Every last trace. And when every door is closed, a man is finally free to stop looking for exits and simply walk out the front. He nodded once. "I know," he said. 2 words. the end of a relationship. He turned, he walked. Not fast, not dramatically. At the pace of a man who knows where he is going, who is not running from anything, who is simply going toward something. Toward himself. Josh stood as he passed him. "Can we talk?" she said. He looked at her for a long moment, and he said, "We already are." And he kept walking. Behind him, nothing followed. No voice calling his name, no footsteps, no hand on his arm. And the silence behind him was the last confirmation he needed. Because people who have lost something precious pursue it. And the silence told him clearly what he had been to that room. Outside, the world was continuing. That is always the first thing. That is always what strikes a person hardest when something enormous happens inside them. The world outside does not register it. The street looked exactly as it had looked when he drove along it 2 hours earlier. Same buildings, same light, same ordinary Saturday morning, moving at its ordinary Saturday morning pace. And standing on the pavement outside that venue, in a suit pressed for a ceremony that would not happen, he found that comforting, genuinely comforting. Because the world's indifference to your pain is also its indifference to its permanence. The world keeps moving, which means you will too. He sat in his car for a long time, not crying, not angry, not making plans. Just sitting with what had happened, letting it be real, letting himself feel the full size of it before he decided what to do with it. And here's what the narrator wants to say about that moment. Because this is the part that matters. This is the part that is easy to skip over in the rush to the conclusion. He did not skip over it. He sat with the loss. He let it be enormous. He did not name it smaller than it was. 3 years of a relationship, 9 years of a friendship, both ended on the same morning. That kind of loss is not small. Anyone who tells you it should be manageable quickly has never actually sat inside it. But he also understood. He had not lost what he thought he had lost. He had not lost Juliana. Not really. Because the Juliana he had loved, the one he had written vows for, the one he had chosen, the one he had built 3 years around, that was a version. A version she had allowed him to believe in, co-created, maintained. What he lost was not her. What he lost was his belief in the version. And that is a profoundly different kind of loss. Because here is what betrayal teaches when a person is willing to sit with it honestly. Betrayal does not destroy what was real. It only destroys what was not. The real things, the genuine moments of connection, the things that were true even inside a structure that was false, those do not disappear. They become complicated, but they do not disappear. What disappears are the illusions, the scaffolding built to hold them up, the things told to yourself about a future based on a present you did not fully understand. Me gentle, barely there presence. And here is what the narrator knows about illusions. An illusion cannot be built on. No matter how beautiful it was, no matter how long it held, no matter how much of yourself you poured into the structure around it, a real life cannot be built on something imagined. And the morning that took the illusion away was also the morning that gave him back the ground. Real ground, actual ground. The kind that can hold weight, the kind you can build something solid on. People always ask whether he was angry. And the answer is not the one they expect. Anger is what you feel when something still has a claim on you. When the wound is still in contact with the source. When the thing that hurt you can still reach you. By the time he walked out of that ceremony, by the time he stood on that pavement, nothing from that room could reach him anymore. Not because he was cold. Not because he had shut down. But because he had been clear. And clarity creates distance, not the hostile kind, the honest kind. The kind where you can finally see something fully because you're no longer standing inside it. It hurt. The narrator wants to be very clear about that. This is not a story about a man who felt nothing. This is not a performance of stoicism. It hurt enormously, not in the days after, not even just in the weeks after, in the months after, in the quiet evenings, in the mornings that felt long, in the moments when a song came on that belonged to the version of the life he had been building. Those moments hurt. Cleanly. Honestly. The way real loss hurts. And he let them hurt. He did not explain them away. He did not fill them with noise. He let the grief be what grief is, the cost of having loved something genuinely. But here is what the narrator wants to say to anyone sitting with a story like this one, either their own or the echoes of their own. The thing that saved him was not the discovery. It was the willingness to follow what he felt before he had a reason to. The feeling at 5:15 in the morning, the question about the silence, the instinct that made his thumb open timestamps instead of messages, the decision to drive instead of ignore. Those were not dramatic acts. They were not courage in the traditional sense. They were simply listening to the information his own body and mind had been quietly collecting for weeks, and finally deciding that the information deserved to be heard. We talk about relationship red flags, as though they arrive clearly labeled, as though the signs of cheating come with evidence attached. They rarely do. More often they arrive as feelings, as small inconsistencies, as moments that do not fully land, as patterns that only become visible when you stop looking at individual moments and start looking at the shape of many moments together. And the single most damaging thing people do inside their relationships, the thing that keeps them inside illusions far longer than necessary, is override those feelings with the desire to believe that everything is what it appears to be. Because they love the person, because they have invested too much to question it, because the alternative feels too painful, too disruptive, too much to face. And so they explain it away. Give the feeling a kinder name. Close the question before it can be answered. And they call that loyalty. But it is not loyalty. It is hope dressed as blindness. Slowest, softest point. Hold for 8 seconds. Real love is not afraid to look. Real love wants to know the truth, because real love believes that the truth, whatever it is better than a beautiful lie. A beautiful lie will hold for a season. Or years, sometimes. But when it breaks, and it will always break, everything built on it breaks with it. The truth might cost everything in the moment you find it. It might cost the ceremony, the plans, the version of the future, the friendships you thought were permanent. But the truth does not break. And you can build on something that does not break. He chose the truth, and he planted himself in honest ground. And whatever grew after that morning, it grew on something real. Slow, gentle fade toward silence. This man walked out of that ceremony and into the rest of his life. He did not know that day what the rest of it would look like. No one does in that moment. All he knew was that the ground beneath him was real. For the first time in a long time, it was real. And that was enough to begin. If this story found something in you, if something in this man's morning reminded you of a morning of your own, a feeling you have been explaining away, a silence that has been speaking to you that you have been choosing not to hear, sit with that. Do not rush past it. Do not give it a kinder name. Let it be what it is, and ask yourself what you already know that you have not yet been willing to follow. Drop a comment below. Tell us, have you ever had a moment where the silence told you everything before a single word was spoken? Every comment is read. Every story matters, because sometimes the most important thing is simply knowing that someone heard it. Subscribe. If this hit differently, hit the bell so you never miss a story. Because this channel exists for one reason, to tell the stories that tell the truth. Real moments, real decisions. The quiet strength it takes to choose clarity over comfort, truth over illusion, and yourself over the version of yourself that other people need you to be. Until next time, stay grounded, stay honest, and keep listening to what you already know.